If you're looking at where you are, especially in your younger generations, and you know the system is broken, why would you put $1 into anything involved in this current system?
They now have to keep printing or we crash.
We've got this ticking time bomb.
Talking gold with the one and only Andrew Maguire.
Welcome to Live from the Vault.
Hi there, my name is Shane Moran and I'll be your host for this week's episode of Live from the Vault. So welcome to the show that goes beyond the headlines and uncovers the truth about the precious metals industry and the effects on the global economy in these historic times. With exclusive access to experts and insiders, we reveal information and insights that you simply won't find anywhere else. Now, this week, we have the one and only Andrew Maguire, precious metals expert and whistleblower in the vault. And to help him pull back the curtains, we will be joined by a returning guest. And of course, from our Live from the Vault community, by popular demand, you got it. It's Mr. Robert Kientz. That's right. Robert Kientz is in the vault, and you're not going to want to miss a word of this conversation. So just before we introduce our featured guest and head over to the UK, please help keep spreading the word about this channel by hitting that like button right there and share this information. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And if you click on the bell, we'll notify you as each episode goes live. And so with that, let me tell you a little about Robert. If you haven't met Robert, he has been covering the precious metals sector since 2009 when he published the book Drop Shadow, The Truth About the Economy. And since then, his written work has been featured in multiple online outlets, including Seeking Alpha, the Financial Sense, Yahoo Finance, Market Watch, NASDAQ, Oil Price, and also many, many others. Now, Mr. Kientz started Gold and Silver Pros as an educational service, discussing and analyzing the latest research and news, which he publishes on various social media outlets. And recently, he's also joined Citizens for Sound Money. And with that, let's head over to the UK and talking gold with the one and only Andrew Maguire and our special guest, Mr. Robert Kientz. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Shane. Actually, yes. No, this is, to me, one of the most special guests we have. And I cannot believe that it's been close on the spring since we spoke last. Robert, thank you for joining us, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I always love coming on your show.
Well, look, I know that since we had you on last time, I know that there was a big move in that you did something with the sound money. You became a sound money advocate. You've always been one, but officially. Can you tell us how that works and what you do there?
Yeah, so one of our founders of Citizens for Sound Money unfortunately passed away due to a very unfortunate accident. And as part of that, I was asked to join the board for Citizens for Sound Money. So I do sit on the board. I am one of the active participating members. It's a volunteer position on our board. And my role there is to just provide insight based upon my exposure to the markets and also lead some of the media efforts, social and mass media, in terms of reaching out to the public and content, networking with other people in the industry and that type of thing. As a part of how Citizens for Sound Money is growing is we've now established a C3, which is basically a way that we can take in money for educational purposes and give a tax write-off to people. So we'll be advertising that soon for people that want to support the movement. And we'll be building a Sound Money Academy out that will have content that will help people understand in a very real and simple way, how money works, how cycles work, educates about sound money. And by the way, we'll be building that K through 12 as well as post, into adulthood. So we want to build programs that really help people across the spectrum understand how money works and why it's important. And then we're going to continue our legislative activities as well. We're ramping up for legislative season here in a few months, where we're going to work in two main states. We're going to work in Florida. We're going to add Texas for this upcoming session in 2025. So we'll be raising money for that. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. We were really close last year in getting legislation passed in Florida. Unfortunately, we were one vote short, and that was I believe the Speaker of the House there, if I remember correctly. So we're going to work on getting that solidified. But we got really close. We're in a study bill right now. They're very positive about it. So we think this may be the year that we get it passed in Florida. And then we'll be doing our efforts in Texas as well. We're also helping out other states, Missouri and the Missouri Freedom Initiative, New Hampshire, a little bit in South Carolina. So The great thing about Citizens for Sound Money is we're expanding to do more legislative impact, and we're also educating at the same time, but we're using different ways to educate people.
I mean, it is fantastic, and I must say, huge supporters of your work. And obviously, I just wanted to quickly say, Jim Forsyth, my goodness me, God bless his soul. He was such a powerful voice for us all. His contacts were amazing, and thank you for coming and joining that. Obviously, that. Bringing your skill set, and I know that you have a forensic accounting background, and these things are so important. One has to be very professional in when you're approaching the kind of work you're doing. You're dealing with legislatures, you're dealing with the highest end, and it's so important that you have between you all, you have all of these skill sets that make good arguments.
Yeah, I think it's important to approach a market a certain way. I just talked about this on my channel on last night's video about how you approach things. I love social media, and social media is a great way to educate people, but there's also a lot of fluff and a lot of clickbait and that type of thing on there. And it's up to us to kind of filter out how we receive information and what we receive. I think from my perspective, what we're trying to do is build something based on solid information, solid understanding of history. And you're right, when we go out to legislators and we go out to the public, we have to operate with a certain level of integrity and have to make sure everything that we do, is above board and that we've got our research. Because I'll ask questions. When we go give testimony, we get asked questions. And in Florida, we're going through a study bill. They're studying how this bill would affect Florida's finances. And they're spending $200,000 on that of the state's money. That's a very serious commitment of the state to say, we're considering this, but we really want to vet it out and know that you're doing it in the right way. And that everything that we would want included in there is in there. It's above board, it's sustainable, all those types of things. So the stuff that we're doing is a little bit longer tailed in that it takes time, it takes effort, it takes study. But when you do it that way, they do respond. We've had such positive response because we're offering solutions that the states themselves can use. It's not just for the people, it's for the states and their own budgets. So we believe in doing it that way. We're providing integrity to the process, and we're making sure that we have the best interest of the people in mind. It's not for a money-making system for us. We're vendor agnostic in terms of who implements these systems. We're really focusing on just getting sound money back into the public, and let the public decide, let the states decide how they want to build that infrastructure, and let the public decide how they want to adopt it. And that's really what we're doing. And I think that's the right way to approach it. It's all about freedom of choice. And we haven't had freedom of choice in the currency perspective. Now we just want freedom of choice. We don't want to force anybody into our way of thinking. We just want to educate and give people a choice and let them, make their own decisions. And I think when you approach it that way, it's better received. And I think that's why we're making so much headway. It's astounding that now 6 states have gold as money as legal tender. Louisiana was the latest one, and that we're working on 7, 8, and 9 is really astounding. And it just goes to show that there's an appetite for it at the state level, and they are listening to their citizens. And at the state level in the United States, you can make a difference. It's much easier to make a difference there than it is in the national. Your voice matters more. If you show up at a state house and you go and talk to your representatives, I guarantee you get their attention, because it happens so rarely. And the last thing I'll say here, Andy, is it's funny that we as Americans all the time talk about our democratic system, our constitutional republic, and we celebrate July 4th and all that good stuff. But are we actually actively out there doing something about it? And really, our government is participation by the people. And by engaging people in the way that we're doing, we're trying to get people to participate in the process. Because when you participate in the process, they do listen. There's a lot of negative thought about politicians and about how that process works. But if you work the process, it does work. You just have to get out and get active. And so we're encouraging people, and we're building grassroots. Part of our organization is building a grassroots effort to get people mobilized and out so that they can have their voice. And that's really how the system should work.
And of course, you're facing incredible headwinds as well. And what you're doing essentially is bringing gold back to where it was before the Fed and all of these crooks, as far as I'm concerned, that sort of took control of everything, basically, in creating really what is now we're heading to a complete breakdown, an end to system. And the thing is, what we're doing here, what you're doing is also it's about education. What you're doing is providing, a mainstream. This is actually more mainstream. This is casting a net out that touches everybody. And I think this is why I wanted to spend a minute or two on it, because I think that the kind of work you're doing here is enormous, because what it does is bring gold to the front of the mind. The average American probably owns what is on their ring, on their finger.
Right.
I mean, it's ludicrous. and I think so. What you're doing is just saying, well, hang on, you're not only are you drawing attention to the alternatives, and people look at their dollar bill and how many dollar bills it requires to buy the same thing, whether it's a food item or whatever, a month or 2 or 3 months later, and people are looking at that and saying, well, hey, there's an alternative. Hey, look, and what you're doing is you're bringing it to really to the mainstream. And I think also drawing attention to, and this is another thing I wanted to draw attention to, is obviously there's a taxation angle to that as well. But what it's doing is actually, from what I understand, it really is a huge counter move to CBDCs.
Yeah, the central bank digital currencies, we recently went to a festival in New Hampshire called Porcupine Festival, or PorcFest. And it's a meeting of various freedom-oriented people. New Hampshire certainly has a history of being, free state, small government, sort of the way that our government was originally designed. And I was out there speaking about the CBDCs and brought awareness to people that normally may not focus on the monetary side of things. So what we're trying to do is not only go to conferences within sound money or gold and silver space or Bitcoin or whatever, but we're trying to branch out into other areas and reach people that are freedom oriented, but may not understand the money. And we keep saying this, we keep saying, fix the money, fix the world, because what you said earlier was so important, that once somebody or a group of entities gets control of the money, they can then control everything else, because money is value and money is what drives, or the illusion of value, because it's actually currency, not money. But by moving gold and silver out and putting the fiat dollar in, and now moving on to the CBDCs, it's ever increasing amounts of control. When the particular scary thing about CBDCs is when you combine that with the 5G networks, the increased mobile networks, and increased mobile internet capacity that's been built out over the last 30 years, and you include the Chinese credit system, what you basically have is a control grid. And what we don't want are those three pieces to be linked together, because then you would have no control over anything in your life. Essentially, you have to do whatever anybody tells you, or else they shut everything off. And in today's connected world, it's just not feasible for people to live like that and have freedom. It is, I think, the antithesis of freedom. It's the opposite system. It's a slavery system. And we don't want that to happen. And being in technology for 25 years and having a master's in cybersecurity, I certainly have embraced technology. I love technology, but technology can be used as a tool for good or as a tool for not good. And the concern I have about the CBDCs is, one, we're not talking about it in the public. They're developing the system. Most of the public doesn't have a darn clue what is going on. They don't know what's going on. They don't know why it's being designed. And they didn't have a say in the design. And so it's not really a democratic process. It's run by the banks of the world, central banks. And I don't know if they have the best track record of doing anything with regards to money or currency. I think they have a horrible track record. And it's because a lot of that is morphed into how they make money from that system and how they benefit, their closest partners and things like that. It's a corruptible system. And we've seen those types of systems in the past, and we know how they all end. So a lot of our education is about what CBDCs are. And when we go speak to groups that may have not seen that before, it's raising a lot of awareness. And we need to continue to do that, because if the public wants to accept CBDCs, they need to have the opportunity to understand what they are before we get into a situation where the dollar crashes and they have no choice and they have to run to it out of fear because they can't buy food, or can't pay their electric bill. So those conversations need to happen now. And the CBDCs, could be a tool for good, could be a tool for control. Given government's track record, when we give them tools like this, I just know eventually it's going to turn into control. And so that's why I just don't want it. I don't want that system. And that's why we have to front run that by doing the legislative side and the educational side to combat, those getting put into place. Because I can tell you right now, if they get put in place in the US, they're going to go everywhere.
Yeah.
138 countries have active CBDC projects. There's nowhere in the world you can go. There's no Columbus anymore. There's no sailing to the new world. There's no go and buying an island. We're at a point in which this is an enclosed system. And if they put their digital CBDCs on top of it, they have control. They have hooks into that system. And that's where we are in our advancement as the human race. And so we need to be aware of that, and we need to understand what the risks are, and we need to have public conversations. And all we're doing is exercising our right to have public conversations, right, that we're given in the Bill of Rights. And certainly a lot of other countries allow that as well, free speech. So that's what we're doing. And I think we need to be very careful about CBDCs and very careful about ever allowing our government to have total control tools like that.
Well, I think this can only happen in America because I look at it from our perspective, everything is just under the table. You find stuff is being agreed without being discussed openly. Obviously, there's all these siloed groups that are, as you say, putting this together. But I think what you're doing there, to me, I'm so encouraged by this, because whereas what you're doing in America is you're exercising your right to actually raise this at a level that we can't approach. I mean, if I was to go to the House of Commons, or get a member of Parliament to go to the House of Commons, and the unlikelihood of a speaker ever raising that question would be, I'd be amazed if it was. And so, how straight an answer would you get? But the thing is, because you're actually dealing with legislatures, you're dealing with states that are actually drawing attention. And in fact, when you think about it, a CBDC has to be everywhere. You can't just have it in one place. So you're acting as the work you're doing is actually so valuable. And as you say, you quite rightly said, if it happens over there, happens in America, it's everywhere. And I think I just want to thank you for this work you're doing there. And obviously it's again, your skill set, cybersecurity, and also, I mean, you bring a lot to the table, forensic accounting, et cetera, et cetera. So you can explain stuff to people at a high level. And I think that's important too. It's, our job here is to try and make it really just draw attention to the general picture of it all. But at that level, you have to be able to fight at that level. And this is like thoroughbred stuff. So I just want to thank you for that. And all the thing and all that you do as your group, because this is very largely unpaid work, and I mean, my goodness me, must take a lot of your hours of a day.
It's mostly volunteer work, and we're surviving on donations and other things, the products we can sell that fit into Sound Money. A lot of what we'll be doing is we've hired someone that's going to formalize our fundraising process. They're in process right now, and they have a lot of experience. And we now have our second paid employee, and we're building out infrastructure as we go to help raise those funds to do the additional things that we need to do to get some of this across the finish line. I would say this: it is unpaid, but I think it's necessary. If I had turned my back on this, I don't know that I could live with myself, because how do you live with yourself when you see what's happening and you say, well, I'm not getting paid for it, I'm not getting something out of it? At some point you have to stop being selfish and you have to look at the community. And we are a community, and we're a worldwide community. We can't deny that anymore. You can talk about independence, you can talk about, everybody has their own laws, but at the end of the day, we're all working together. We're working together for resources, we're working together for advancement of society. And at some point in time, we all got to the people got to come together and kind of call out, what they view as their view on things. We can't be ruled by a group of small elites that are out of touch and don't understand us. We have to provide feedback to them and say, hey, we're over here. And by the way, we're the engine that makes the world run. So let's talk about, the will of the people, but the will of the people across the spectrum, across countries. And thankfully, we live in an internet era in which we can do that. So we're going to continue to march on. I appreciate what you do on your channel as well. And we just need to continue to build that out. We need high quality channels on social media. There are so few that are really and have the bigger picture in mind, that are looking at the big picture and not just at themselves. And that's something I talked about last night. I was very expressive about that last night. The greater financial community on social media and in mass media needs to start thinking about the bigger picture, because we're all in this. And if you're not thinking about this, you're just going to end up being a victim of it. And yes, we're volunteers, but it's something that's key to our freedom going forward and going back to the American system. We hold the keys in our hands. If we're not successful, it's because we didn't do what we needed to do. We're the ones that govern ourselves ultimately, and we tell the legislators what to do. And it's only because we're not out there doing it. So we need to mobilize and start thinking about that and start being a little bit selfless in how we look at this, because we're all in this together. This isn't something where it's an issue that you can live with on either side. This is something that's either totalitarian control or it's freedom. And make your choice. Do you want to be free or do you want to be controlled? Well, if you want to be free, then we got to put in the effort. And so it's no longer about, do I want to do something? It's about, well, if I ever want my freedom, if I ever want my kids to have the freedom, we have to do this. In any case, I think it's a good thing. And I think, we'll have a positive impact regardless of every individual outcome of what happens and what we try. I think the fact that we're marching this forward has created momentum in the movement. And it's to the point, Andy, where I told the board the other day, I think it's going to run without us. I think at some point this has become an overwhelming movement where people all wake up and say, this is something we need to do. And what we're trying to do is put an infrastructure in place so that when that comes, there's someone to turn to, that when people are panicking, they say, we got to do something, that there is a resource there that they can latch onto that will, give them that ability to educate, understand, talk, make decisions that are best for them, and do it as a community. And it has to be a worldwide community. So I think that's our focus, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and otherwise, where do you start? Exactly. So this is before before you sort of paint a house, you have to do the walls, you have to get everything going.
Yeah.
But look, obviously, none of this could happen without gold, without physical gold, really leveling the playing field. Really, you're going back 100 years, basically. And you're bringing gold back to where it always was. It was always real money. It was the only form of real money. And I think without gold, it would be a very difficult. I don't see how it would work.
Yeah, gold is really going to be the linchpin. It's funny, even in the CBDC system, they're backing it with gold. That's Project Orem and unitfoundation.org, which is a Russian. Two independent Russian researchers produced that, but they're recognizing on both sides of the pond that gold has to be a part of this system, and their plan is to eventually remove it from the system. And that would remove honesty and integrity, and that would remove natural limits as to the growth in power and in bureaucracy. And our system, however, doesn't. It puts gold at the forefront, and it says you can have electronic components on top. You can do all of these things, but gold is always going to be centered there, because gold is natural limiter on government growth and power and tyranny. And also gold tends to balance portfolios, but from a monetary perspective, it's been the one that's allowed the best of our society to flourish. Back when gold was money, we had some of our biggest, I would say, moving into industrialization, and the scientific discoveries we had were really under gold. And if you look at the fiat system now, the fiat system rewards rent seeking, it rewards malinvestment, and it doesn't reward necessarily the advancement of society. Gold does that better than any other thing we've used as currency or as money. And until we find something better than gold, we should stick with it. And what we're seeing around the world now, Andy, is everybody's getting involved in the gold markets. You're seeing the development of the Dubai market. I've been told recently that someone may ask me to go work in Dubai to be a part of that gold movement down there. It's a company that's establishing gold storage programs and things for very high net worth investors. And that could be an opportunity where I go, back to the cradle of civilization, and where gold is very important. You see it in China also, in the Shanghai, in the development of the Shanghai. And I think that there is a movement away from some of the derivative paper-based markets into more physical-based markets that you see in the East and the Middle East. And I think that's in preparation for what everybody knows is coming, which is the failure of the dollar. So it's no surprise that gold is coming to the forefront. It's always been what we run to when stuff breaks down, and it will be again. And it's those countries and those cultures that recognize that are going to do better going forward and be able to control inflation and be able to grow. And the other interesting thing is, when I was at PDAC, we talked about this last time, but when I went to PDAC in March, I talked with companies out of Saudi Arabia that were saying that Saudi Arabia is encouraging the entire economy to invest in mining and in resource development because they know they're out getting out of the petrodollar, but they know that they need to develop their gold reserves and they need to develop their manufacturing capacity. So think about what I just said. Using gold as a way to get out of their declining oil trade and get into a manufacturing building-based economy. When do countries do that? They do that when this fiat bubble system is getting ready to burst, because how do you repair that and grow out of it? You become a manufacturing or a product or a development-based economy. And so you're seeing that around the world. You're seeing China's already done it. The Belt and Road Initiative is taking all of those resources and saying we need to develop, the next step of our economy. And we're putting gold at the center of that, the forefront of that. And gold's always been that. Until we, invent something else, it's going to be gold. And, the digital currencies, as much as I like and may participate, they don't do it. The central bank digital currencies are designed to do the opposite. So where are you going to turn to if you don't turn to gold? Gold has to be the epicenter of it. It's really the only answer.
To me, it's the only truly fungible medium of exchange, which is accepted anywhere in the world, from the tiniest Solomon Island to the center of any city. It is because every single bit of energy that ever went into producing the piece of gold that you're using as a barter of exchange is in it, and it can't be debased. And it's the only truly fungible asset that cannot be debased. Everything else can be debased.
Yeah, it can be, and it has been over time. And even when you get gold into money, they debase the currency. So there have to be standards in place which define what gold is, what money is, and that's part of our legislative efforts. And it's a part of awareness. It's back during the Great Depression, I think people figured out what things were worth. And I refer to that because my parents grew up during that generation. People understood where things were worth. And now we're in the fourth generation since that. And people are getting back to basics because the lifestyles they're able to live, they're not able to live anymore. They were kind of false lifestyles driven by expanding money that's now collapsing and breaking and causing all this problem around the world. And what are people getting back to? The basics. They're going back to the basics of life. They're going back to the basics of finance. And it comes full circle. It's just, every 4 generations, we seem to gravitate back towards gold, and gold's always been that barometer. Well, why do we do it that way? Why don't we just keep a gold a part of it the whole time so that we don't have to go through these destructive and painful cycles? And really what it amounts to is gold amounts to the freedom of the people. And when we acquiesce and allow our governments and even our corporate and other institutions to grow so big through these fiat systems, we lose that control. But what do we go back to? We go back to gold. What's the world going back to? It's going back to gold. What did Zimbabwe do? Gold-backed digital currency. Mm-hmm. What is Kinesis building? A gold and silver-backed electronic transfer mechanism using, the Stellar blockchain. Why? Because that's what the economy needs. And that's what they've done in Indonesia. And that's what they're partnering with other countries to do that will be, announced in the future. So these are the types of systems that we need. And it's good that people are working on it. The movement is much bigger than you and me, Andy. There are thousands and thousands of people working on this, and it all centers on gold. And there's a reason why it centers on gold.
Yeah, and it brings incredible discipline to, as you say, it serves the people, but it actually brings discipline to the rulers. Yeah. And it's funny, when I live in the UK here. I live in the Cotswolds here, and I know I've visited a castle not that long ago. I've been there multiple times, Warwick Castle, and you go down there and you go to the vault room, and there's the old vault, the old strong box, and it made me think, because when that was full of gold coins, and you would, if you wanted to attack your neighboring castle, and you wanted to get hold of all their assets, you would first count how many gold coins you had to pay a number of troops that you would actually be able to succeed. If there was insufficient and it went too long, they would probably turn on you and attack you. So what it did was essentially it would force you to really think twice about war, about many, many things that we see now. And we look over to what's going on in Ukraine. We look at what's going on around the world. And it is basically so dangerous. We're literally at the pivot point of potential nuclear war over. And this is all to do with, I mean, if your government didn't print $1 trillion every 100 days and sell those and find someone to buy those, some idiot to buy those bonds, how could they possibly finance any of these wars?
It would be impossible. And the biggest governor on, if you associate freedom with peace, which I do throughout history, the more peace there is, the more freedom there is, the more individual choice and the more harmony and the more productive capacity and the more advancement of civilization through peaceful times. When you go to war, all of that stops. And do people really want to live in that world? No. That's the biggest vote for gold, is that the way that you ensure that you are living your best life and that your neighbor is living their best life and you have opportunity and in the bountiful world that we live in is to incorporate gold and to stay away from fiat systems, whether it be electronic or paper. That's the biggest benefit of gold. And it's really funny, Andy. As I go around and I talk to people in younger generations, they know, because it's almost impossible for them to get jobs and build wealth and have families and buy houses in the US right now for those generations, that they need an alternative. There is, in these younger generations, millennials and the Gen Zers, they have open ears. They're looking for solutions because they don't have the benefits that our generations had. And they're ripe for us to help them find a solution. They're right for listening to gold. It's easier for me, Andy, to talk to someone who's in their mid-20s about gold than it is to talk to someone my own age, because they're suffering more from the collapse of this fiat system. And if you look at all the negative news, the news cycle has just turned so incredibly negative, it's hard for me even to watch it anymore. Watching news, it's death and destruction everywhere. And that's a sign of the times. And it's a sign of the corruption of the currency and the outpaced growth of government. What did we do? What did the Supreme Court do in the United States last week? They reversed the Chevron decision. And what that does is Chevron allowed the bureaucracy and the executive branch to basically make law, to interpret law. Well, the court system is in a separation of powers. It's supposed to be the judicial branch. And the Supreme Court reversed it because the government had grown so big. Because what you have is you have this bureaucracy that's making all the decisions about all the rules in society with no input from the people. And that necessitates this massive growth of government. And what does that necessitate? A corruptible money supply. And so the reversal of that Chevron case, a 40-year decision reversal, should reduce the size of government and reduce the propensity of us to spend all this fiat on things we don't need to. And there's other things that need to happen as well. There's other fixes that need to happen. But these are the types of things that we need to go back to: separation of powers, limited power, putting honest money in, and then we're not going to live in this constant fear cycle that we're in. I think people are being gaslit by their representatives. They're being lied to. The deep state that we've talked about so much in the last 4 to 5 years, it's been brought to the front of the conversation through the presidential elections and through, the news cycle, is showing us that there is a group of people out there that doesn't really care about us. And, that's a danger to the freedom of the people. And that's where the people need to say, wait a minute, let's go back and look at this. And is this, the system that we want? And certainly, I don't think anybody in the U.S. right now is cheerleading on multiple wars in the Middle East. I think we're all sick of war. And none of us wants to go fight Russia. The antagonism that's going on, trying to draw Russia into a broader war, bring Ukraine into NATO, is just causing unnecessary conflict. There are other ways to go about that are more diplomatic and that don't involve, participation of NATO and all these countries. But those solutions are never talked about because it's so much easier just to print a bunch of money and go build a bunch of missiles and go bomb stuff, especially when you have a bureaucratic state that's been allowed to grow uncontrolled outside of the Constitution. So all of those things, are signs of issues, and the younger generations are living in that time. This is supposed to be the most fruitful time of their life. It's supposed to be having babies and the wonderfulness of life and great jobs and living out their best life. And they can't even make ends meet. They have to live with their parents. those generations are more apt to listen. And that's what's exciting. The reason I brought that up, it's so exciting because we have a fresh new couple of generations of people that are going to turn to gold and silver at some point, just like my generation did during the great financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And that's a wonderful thing to have. Yeah. And they're, I think, going to be the ones that propel this forward because they got nothing to lose. They got everything to lose staying in the current system.
Yeah.
They've got nothing to lose by trying something new. But we need to get out in front of them and educate them so that they, they'll have the information they need to make the right choices. That's the key. And largely that's why we're focusing on media and legislation because, and I've been focusing on that for years, but also with C4SM, both roles, because we know we have to get that out there and let people know what their alternatives are so they can make informed decisions. It's the only way really to fight, what's coming down the pipe, what we're going to be facing. So continue to do that and, continue to educate people on the value of gold and holding gold in ways in which you can circulate it. Just putting gold on your mattress is great for a rainy day, but if you do with that all of your gold and silver, effectively you've taken it out of supply. You've taken that gold and silver out of being money, out of the ability to facilitate and transact in commerce in a way which keeps inflation at bay. So we need to get back to circulating that money around and using systems that help us circulate it around and building our own alternative economy so that we have choices. So it's about educating on it. It's about buying it, using it, and looking at the alternatives. And again, if the people do this, they have all the power in this thing. We have all the power. It's just a matter of, are we going to use that power? And we have a lawful right to do it. So we should do it. But again, getting back to the education and getting in front of the younger generations, which I think are going to power the next big wave of sound money. I think they're going to be the key to it. And that's why I'm excited to do all of the education that we're doing to set that generation up to have that information so that they can make those decisions.
Made a really interesting point. Younger people, as you say, to have they are, what have they got to lose? It is a terrible situation they're facing, and really, so essentially, everyone I speak to who is younger is actually looking for change. They don't want war. They don't want any of this control. And I think you've raised a really interesting point: is that if you're disenfranchised with the current system, and you're looking for solutions, and you're offered this as an alternative, where it's sound money, it's like the ability to, all of these things resonate with young people, intelligent young people who have got information overload, who get their information other than the mainstream media. And, we just recently had an election in this country. And essentially, what I saw was one of the parties there, and I know him personally, is Nigel Farage, came up with an alternative. He said, none of this, no more wars, no more this, no more that. Let's just get back to common sense. And of course, they try to take him down and one thing or another. But the thing is, none of the young people, 17-year-old kids, are following him saying, if I was old enough to vote, I'd vote for you. And it's like, so you've got this upsurge of young people coming in looking for solutions that is not the what is being channeled at them right now. There's no alternative. Everyone across the world, whether it's, it's almost like a unipolar sort of mindset, and I think constructed unipolar mindset, which is, one party and the other party are really not that different. And it's just, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. They're all self-absorbed. It's all about, there's no real solutions. Kids need a solution. And I think this is so important, Robert, what you just resonated with me is, yes, this is actually really encouraging when we see the young people coming up and looking for a solution, but they need somewhere to start. And I think this is why it's so important. The work you're doing is actually mind-blowingly important.
Yeah, it is. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in the economy, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But the summer tends to be a little boring in terms of gold and silver. And I don't mean to splash water on gold and silver, but it's the time at which, if you're buying bullion, it tends to be one of the best times because usually you get a late summer fade. I do think that we'll get a little bit of a late summer fade this year, but it depends on the news cycle. If we have big news, gold and silver will go back up, but it's a good opportunity to get in. But I think heading into this election cycle in the fall, there's going to be a tremendous amount of uncertainty and turbulence. I've said since last year, 2024 is going to be a year of volatility. It has been. We're sitting in the eye of the hurricane right now in the summer. But when the fall comes back, because of the election cycle, because of the financial cycle, because of the bank issues, because of the wars, everything, it's like we're all on summer vacation. When we come back, we're going to get splashed in the face with cold water. And that's going to move markets around a lot. And we may be nearing the time, Andy, at which it's very difficult to have affordable gold and silver. In fact, I would say this. In the U.S., with gold hovering around 23 to 2,400 and silver now up over 30 solidly for a while, it's getting less easy for people to participate in that market. You have inflation eating at people's ability to spend or save, and you have the metals going up. And so there's been less participation on the physical side this year in gold and silver than people would have anticipated given the prices. However, I think that's going to change. I think when people realize the depth of the problem, when the general public wakes up, and they're starting to, but it takes time to kind of build your awareness and start to focus in on the problem. And when you get to that focus stage or that crisis stage of what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the political cycle, what's going on geopolitically, people are going to rush to gold and silver in droves. They're going to cycle out of their other investments, stocks and bonds. They're going to pull money out of the bank. There will be bank runs and bank failures, and there will be a tremendous rush into the physical assets. And this may be, I don't know if it will be, but this may be the last year where it's really affordable for people. And then moving forward, it's going to get more expensive. So now's the time. If you want to get involved and you have the capability to buy gold and silver, now may be the time you want to look at it. Certainly the summer is a great time to buy because you get a little bit lower prices, but you want to do it before the volatility. The swings in the market will be very wild. We're going to see $100 moves in gold every day. We may see $5 to $10 moves in silver. That's coming. And in addition to, I suspect governments are going to try to, the national governments are going to try to pass laws limiting people's access to some of this commodity-based money at some point because they're going to panic. What you're seeing in Mexico is a little bit more control over the mines by a more leftist government. And I think governments are signaling that there may be a nationalization risk. I don't want to panic anybody, but I think also there's a lot of legislation coming forward with that's going to limit people's ability to use gold and silver, to save in it, apply taxes to it, that type of thing. So we've got to counteract that, but also you want to get into it now because it may be cheaper now for you to do it in the future, even at today's prices. But I think the dynamic of having excess gold and silver physical available to the public is quickly disappearing when you look at world reserves and when you look at what people have at coin shops and things like that. So we're running short of time if you want to participate, because when that mad rush goes in, if you think back to bank runs, or even if you look at like AMC stock, when people pile into something, it gets very expensive. And we're not quite at that stage, but we're getting very much close to that stage. It could be a year or less, maybe slightly more, but we're not talking big lengths of time here. So the timing of how you get in this market is important. And the summer's a great time to participate. There's a little bit less buzz, prices fade a bit, people are on vacation, and at least in the United States. And that's a great time to participate. So if you're thinking about it, look at the seasonal patterns and say, hey, maybe this is time that I want to get into that. And also, if you look at the bigger geopolitical pattern, it may be more difficult to get involved later on. This is now when you want to get in gold, silver, establish your account, that type of thing.
So what's interesting is and this is special that you've got you on here, because I know you face both the retail and the wholesale markets.
Yeah.
So and what I'm seeing from this side of the pond is a certain amount of retail buyers' resistance, thinking, because they're being gaslighted, to think that, well, hang on, historically, it'll always come down. Big mistake, because what they're not seeing is the wholesale markets are extremely strong. And there's a de-dollarization process going on, which they're not aware of. So I guess really what I'd like to know is, from the retail point of view, your side of the pond, are you seeing some buyers' resistance at this level? Yeah,
and you're right on the wholesale level. The wholesalers are moving it to all sorts of entities. The the organization that was interested in maybe bringing me over to Dubai to help them out is an organization that is taking mine output, packaging it, and moving it in huge sizes. We're talking kilograms, tons, huge sizes of gold and silver to large buyers. These are sovereigns. These are large institutions. These are very wealthy individuals. That end of the market right now is absolutely red hot. There is a little bit of retail resistance. In the United States, I think people are dealing with inflation. They're actually net selling, but they're selling their rings. Like you mentioned, they may only have gold in their ring. Well, guess what? They're selling their way. It's the most heartbreaking thing in the world to have had people come to me and say, I need to sell my ring to you, or I need to sell the silverware I've had in my family for 250 years. But that's what's happening. So net of retail, they're selling, but it's selling of those consumer products made of gold and silver back when we did. And there are some buys in gold and silver. It tends to be wealthier individuals, people that have free cash that see what's coming. But there is overall an overhang on that market where the fiscal sales at the retail side are not strong. But look at what's going on around the world, that the moneyed interests are buying it hand over foot. And that should be the signal to retail to get in, follow the big money. The big money knows what's coming. They're the most educated, often in case they have a lot of control or a lot of say in what goes on. If they're piling in at that side, the retail needs to follow. But what typically drives retail is the news cycle. Most people that got into silver and gold during the great financial crisis got into it as silver was past 35 going to 50. And they weren't participating before then. So a lot of the news drives euphoria and people get into it. And that's also a function of social media. I want to talk about that for just a sec. Social media tends to reflect opinions of people, but also drive and influence people. That's why we're called influencers. The influence right now in social media is not to focus on this kind of stuff. It's very entertainment based. But there has been, over the last 5 years, an inordinate amount of new influencers and voices coming into the gold and silver space, into honest money, things like that. And you can see it building. You can see it building. You can see it building. So there is this undercurrent of people starting to recognize that we need to start talking about these problems, and they're getting views. It's not just me and 3 or 4 other people anymore. There's 100 people talking about this, and a lot of great outlets to go to. So that's a reflection of renewed interest. But on the retail side, people aren't putting their money into it, and that's what we need to happen if we're actually going to use gold and silver as money. You got to get it into the system. You got to get it in the hands of people, and people got to be able to use it. You got to have systems in place that allow people to move it around. And that's really the stage we're in. We're in the awareness stage, moving into building the infrastructure stage, and then finally we'll get that adoption stage. But that adoption stage is probably going to be driven by the increased news. And that's why I said 2024 is going to be volatility. Why volatility in 2024? It's not just about interest rates and the Fed. It's about people's perception of the world and them saying, I need to go from here to here, and I need to get in a car, but which car do I get in? We're trying to provide the vehicle for them to get to point B, and then they'll get to point B. And that's the volatility. You're seeing people pull out of traditional investments and think about alternatives. Maybe they're thinking crypto, maybe they're thinking gold. And that's where the volatility comes. And then you have the big boom. The big boom will probably happen in the next year or two, where you see all the cycle rotation from people dumping other stuff and panicking in. I don't think we're at that stage. So we are going through stages, even though retail is weak and there's a little bit of a reversal of the cycle. What you have is people melting down gold and silver, going to wholesale, wholesale sells to the big guys. Eventually, retail is going to catch on. Wait a minute, I need to go buy. Let me sell this piece of real estate. Let me get rid of my 401k. We're not there, but there is this underswell of understanding something is wrong and what is the vehicle I need to get into, and then eventually that will come. So I think we're going to have an absolute explosion of adoption of gold and silver. No doubts about that whatsoever. What I saw in 2008, 2009 opened my eyes, and that was a much smaller issue than what we're dealing with now. What we're dealing with now is more worldwide, and it is huge, in the quadrillions if you're looking at derivatives of financial risk.
Yeah.
And the stakes on wars and the stakes on elections. Look at France with Le Pen and their wins, and Trudeau, or what's going on, in Canada, France, and in the UK in terms of these independent voices or these alternative voices starting to rise, politically. You've seen some of that in the United States with some more conservative movements and, discussing whether this two-party system is even working. So a lot of stuff is changing. It's under the radar, and retail hasn't grasped but there is move and change, and retail will eventually grasp onto it. And that's why we need the infrastructure. It's why we need Kinesis building infrastructure. It's why we need education, and that will come. It definitely will come. Anybody that's watching this, don't make the mistake of thinking that because silver hasn't exploded to $50, it will never happen. I see a lot of frustration in the gold and silver market from American stackers saying, when the hell is this going to happen? It's happening now, but the way that it happens is slowly, then all at once. That's always the way financial moves work. Slowly and then all at once. We're in the slowly, but the all at once is coming. And I don't think it's going to be too long. And don't take the usual summer weakness as a sign of the markets. That's normal. It's a normal summer fade. But look at the explosion this fall. If you want to convince yourself, just watch the explosion in precious metals prices this fall. Watch the explosion of the financial system. Watch this election cycle in the United States may be the most contentious election cycle in our history. And that's saying a lot, especially in the early days when we were first electing presidents and figuring our stuff out. I just went to Philadelphia the week before July 4th, and we were doing a tour of Independence Hall and where the Constitution was drafted and all that. And the tour guide, basically an historian, was telling us this republic was teetering for a long time before we kind of got established. And political elections were very dirty and ugly, and a lot of times. We're returning to that. Why? Because the stakes are higher. And this might be one of the dirtiest and ugliest and non-pretty election cycles we've ever seen. And that's a reflection of all of the problems that we have. And that is going to drive people into all sound alternatives, safety nets, things like that. So there's no reason to believe that gold and silver aren't going to do exceptionally well. There's no reason to believe that the people are not going to get involved, but we're sitting where the awareness is just starting and where we've got that sort of buildup of sentiment. But you can see it. You can see it in social media. I can't go anywhere without talking to people and them saying something's wrong. So it's going from something is wrong to what is the solution. That's the gap that we need to bridge. And that's what we're doing. That's what your channel does. That's what we do. And we can both be proud to be a part of that movement. You know, we can only control what we can control. We can reach the people we can reach, but we are part of that solution. And just know that everything that we're doing, Andy, is reaching people that are going to reach other people, and the network effect is going to start to take effect. And, you know, that's exponential over time. So I encourage people to understand at the beginning, it's, you know, it goes like this, and then you get that exponential bump in awareness, investment, all those things. That's coming. So there's a lot of people that got frustrated and they're trying to, you know, people are saying, should I trade in my silver for platinum? I'm like, well, I'm not your financial advisor, but no. Why would you do that? If we're going to have a deflationary recession, platinum price is probably going to come down because it's mostly an industrial metal. Why would you get out of a monetary metal that's cheap right now to get into an industrial metal that may come down? So I just encourage people to do their research. Hold on. We're not there yet, but we're really close. Don't give up now. Don't get frustrated. Know that look at what's going on in the world, and where else are you going to go? So don't give up now. That's the key. Don't give up now. Stay strong in your conviction and stay tuned to channels like these and educate, get your positivity in. The negativity in the world is going to scramble your brain. Keep the positive in your brain. Keep the goal in mind. You know, don't lose sight of that. It's so important to stay positive. You know what you know. You can't unknow it. So don't give up. You know, just stay with the cycle. The cycle will happen. It will happen. And it's coming. And I suspect that gold and silver dealers in the United States are going to be very happy over the next couple of years because they may have more business than they have metal at some point. So it's coming. I mean, we're getting really close to it.
Yeah, and I think again, the retail market is a good proxy for sentiment. And I think what is amazing to me is that if you really take a step out to look at the big picture, what is happening here? What is happening is that the de-dollarization process has ramped up enormously. Now, I think if we go back to what happened the last time there was a physical shortage of gold and a physical shortage of silver was in March 2020, when there happened to be a COVID lockdown, and overnight, bang, $100 premiums to buy back your short hedges, so-called hedges, for what you didn't even have to deliver in the FX market. Yeah. So $100 premiums. Okay, it was a bailout. It was bailed out, one thing or another. But what is to stop China the BRICS nations, and certainly we've got October coming, when there will be a launch of Brezhnev's-esque currency. But what is to stop? With all these sanctions coming on board, with what is now openly what looks to be, I mean, it's not possible to win against Russia. It's a lose-lose situation. If you want to start a nuclear war, then you may beat Russia and it will blow everyone. We'll all be dead. But the pivot is actually moving from Ukraine to the Chinese doorstep. The pivot is happening, and you can see it happening. And the sanctions are starting, and even Trump is going to increase those sanctions. Now, do you think China has a nuclear option, a financial nuclear option at their fingertips? And if one day we wake up and there is no physical available to the Western markets, and the EFPs are jumped on for supply because they broke once before and it happened to be COVID, but now you get a shortage. And what you're just talking about, guys, you sitting on the sidelines, you could wake up to $100, $200, $300 price. You could wake up to $3,000 gold before anyone can be happy about the price. And I think, again, silver, why wouldn't it be 50? Gold is making all-time highs. What you're dealing with is a synthetic marketplace where the only central bank globally that is short physical gold, short gold, is the Fed, because it's their hegemonic. The only central bank that is actually still trying to cap the price of gold against the dollar. Every other central bank, even European central banks, even the Bank of International Settlements, have got rid of their derivative positions. And to me, this is amazing to me that people are actually saying, I wonder if the price will come down. Well, what the hell? I mean, just get in there, guys.
Yeah, especially during the summer, you have that summer fade, but long term, it will not go down. And essentially, you're right. That's why I said the COMEX and the LBMA are eventually going to cease being the center of the universe for gold and silver pricing. You've already got intervention through HSBC, for example, for China and Hong Kong into the Western markets. JP Morgan is helping China build their commodities markets, helping them expand their gold and silver. So the banks are agnostic of where the financial centers sit. They're going to make money either way. And it's the financial power is moving east, as you said. And you can see it in the political landscape about America and NATO and those Western-based entities attacking all these competitors, trying to keep them from rising. But it's inevitable. You're not going to stop China from rising to be the largest economy in the world. It's their time. They made all the right choices. We made all the wrong ones. Well, boo-hoo. That's what happens when you continually screw things up. We just have to accept it. And yes, there will be a time at which we will have no access to gold and silver. That's a good point that you brought up that I didn't mention. It could be a point in time when your local coin dealer has none except for what's in his safe. And when he's out, he's out. He's out and he cannot get it. And the point about the pandemics in 2020, look at what happened to gold and silver price when that was a momentary shutdown in the economy. Look at what happens when you talk about a Great Recession or Great Depression. What is going to happen then? Gold and silver are going to go. Look at what's happened to the prices without the U.S. public buying gold and silver. They're already reaching new all-time highs in gold, and they've broken through that magical $30 barrier that the CFTC, as the regulator in the American markets, put on silver, and now they can't hold that anymore. We've broken the CFTC's control of the $30 limit in silver that Rost and Benham came out publicly and said that they did on purpose in public. So the Western markets don't control it anymore. They don't control it. They influence but don't control. And it's moving east, and there will be a point in time in which we don't have it. And the EFPs and the TASs and the block trades that you have on COMEX, all these ways of working around that system to get liquidity are not going to work. And it's going to go force majeure. Contracts are going to break. There's going to be a huge announcement. We have to shut down the markets. It's going to be a gold and silver run. The run won't be at your local bank. It's on the COMEX markets in the U.S. It's on the LBMA. That's the way those markets work. And then where are people going to go? They're going to go where liquidity is. They're going to go east. And all of a sudden, those are going to become the markets. And if you're thinking about buying gold and silver in the U.S. or the U.K. or Europe right now, you want to do it now because you're going to have liquidity issues. We've seen that run off of the warehouse stocks. And all it takes is one shock to drain everything. And if you get a shock in the system where people are afraid and they're going to gold and silver, they're not going to go sell it back on the exchange. Forget that. They're going to hold on to it. They're going to lease it. They're going to rehypothecate it, or they're going, to keep it. And there could be a point in time in which it's like nickel. There is no nickel, right? Look at what happened to nickel. It went no bid. You'll see that in gold and silver. You see vertical pricing. And then where you're going to get your pricing, you're going to go to Shanghai and say, give me your price, because you're a physically traded market. Go to Dubai, you're a physically traded market. Those will be the pricing mechanisms. And that's it's changing already. You can see it in the data. It's been clear as day the last 4 to 5 years, maybe longer for you, Andy. You've been following this for a long time, but the last 4 to 5 years, you've seen that dramatic shift in how these markets work and who's participating and what they're going after. And that coincides with the rise of CBDCs. Why are we going to have CBDCs in the US? Because we don't have the gold. If we had gold, why in the hell would we do CBDCs? We just rebalance to gold. We don't have the gold. They're not going to be able to run it out of Fort Knox or below, in New York, in the New York Fed. It's not there. It belongs to someone else. So if you're in the Western world, you better get it now. And like I said, the back half of summer is the best time seasonally to do it. This is the time, the next 6 weeks to 2 months until about mid-September. If you're looking to get in price-wise, this is your last great entry point. After this, even next summer, we're going to be in so much crisis. I do not expect the seasonal trade to affect gold and silver that much next summer. No. I think we're going to be in like an extended COVID type of situation where this goes on for years.
Yeah.
And, and I keep saying this and keep people saying, Rob, you're crying wolf. No, it's a process. And we're at the point where that whole system is breaking. And, if you're watching this and you're thinking about making a decision, I always say, do your own research. I'm not your financial advisor, but man, are you running out of time? There is no time. There is no tomorrow in this type of situation. There is no tomorrow. Today is tomorrow. So you can't control what happens tomorrow either. So better act today. That's always been, my advice.
And for those people that are hanging on to the old paradigms and saying, well, and I thought this was really interesting. This is from Citigroup. And it's just becoming apparent. This is the same bank that is projecting $3,000 gold.
Yeah.
Saying gold bellwether relationship with the US real interest rate has broken down quite spectacularly over the past 2 years, with gold reaching all-time highs despite real rates. I mean, wake up, guys. For those people, and this is the argument I get, oh yeah, but hang on, when you weigh up the whole picture, throw that old paradigm out the door, because the physical prices, the physical market is now being settled outside of this paper world. And
yes,
so essentially what you're doing is each time, we see it all the time, in intraday, you see little bits of correlation intraday, and people think, oh, it's still going on. Step back and look at the bigger picture. That has gone. In fact, since the 1st of January 2023, when gold became reclassified as a first-year asset class, why would you not be invested in counterparty risk first asset gold when your only other that competes directly with the US Treasury, which has nothing but faith? So this is what we're seeing with people that was waking up to the fact, hang on, gold's rising, and it's completely dislocated from the old paradigm. And I think so to those people that still look at that and look at the price is coming down to 2,000 because the moving averages are there. Moving averages, historical moving averages, nothing to do with the real market. So to me, it's amazing. And this is half the time I spend. Just hang on, guys. Give your head a shake and look at this with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I think so. And you can get worn down by the wait is long, but you have to look at longer term timeframes, look over several hundred years of history. And that's where you get your education and you understand. Don't be stuck in the last 20 years. If you get stuck in the last 20 years, rarely is that a way to make good long-term decisions. Making good long-term decisions is looking at the long term. And certainly if you're just living for tomorrow, you're never going to be prepared for what's coming. And you living for today, sorry, you do have to live in today. but it's helpful to take a little bit of your time and think about the future and prepare for these types of things. And we're at the end of an epic of worldwide fiat paper currencies. They're all going to burn down to the ground. And we're going to go back to what we know, because the alternative is scarier and worse. We don't want. There is no other alternative. I don't understand where else people think that they're going to go. Why most of the hedge fund traders in the US have not just piled into gold like mad is beyond me. What the hell are you looking at in treasuries that tells you that a year or 2 years from now, that's going to benefit your firm? What is the general stock market sitting at all-time high, even though the economy is a dumpster fire in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Is telling you that U.S. equities are the place to be long-term. Why wouldn't you go to emerging market equities? Why wouldn't you go to gold and silver? That's where the value is over time. I think the existing financial infrastructure in the United States and the existing financial knowledge in the United States has been too focused on the last 20 to 30 to 40 years. And they're going to get a lesson, and it's going to be a nasty and hard one, that you just lost the long-term game. And the power of your portfolios just got destroyed. We're going to have so many bankruptcies and bank failures. It's going to make people's heads spin. There was an article that came out that 292 banks in the U.S. are in serious trouble. I think Bank of America was part of that reporting. There were other sources. Bank of America was part of that reporting. They're a bank, and they're one of the ones in financial trouble. And there were 292. We haven't even gotten to an official recession yet. This is going to be a bloodbath in traditional finance. Where are people's heads? Where are the financial houses? Where's the financial media? Are you guys nuts? Your whole lives are wrapped into a system that's burning down right before your eyes. You're going to go to treasuries? Like you said, China, all they have to do is dump a bunch of their treasuries, and that market collapses to zero. It will go no bid zero. No bid meaning nobody wants it. Not that you don't have any, you have too many. Nobody wants it. Nobody's going to put in a bid for that. What does that do to the finances of the Western banking system? It craters it. And you're right. And if they don't have gold to offset that, they're in trouble. It's going to be a cascading financial collapse.
Yep. It is.
And the only way to go is to what has historically worked. It's to gold. And I would say emerging market properties and stocks and businesses that may have value, that are going to be in growth stages and that aren't burdened by stupid policies and, trillions of dollars of debt and that kind of stuff like we have here, especially in the U.S. And for anybody in the U.S. looking at this situation, if you're looking at where you are, especially in your younger generations, and the system is broken, why would you put $1 into anything involved in this currency? It's not going to serve you. That dollar is going to be whisked away to somebody else, and it's going to make them money. You want to be on the other side, be on the winning side. So go educate yourself and go understand finance beyond 5 to 10 years, understand the long-term picture, understand the history of it, and then go make decisions. And then you can sleep well at night. I've got gold in the vault. I can sleep at night, Andy. It disturbs me this is going on in the world, but I haven't jumped off a bridge yet because I have that gold in my pocket and that silver in my pocket. And I have a mission to educate and help other people. Everybody that's watching this, protect yourself. Protect yourself. Do what makes good long-term sense so you can sleep at night. Don't be the victim here. They're going to be victims. Don't be the victim. Why would you want to be the victim?
Yeah, you're talking about action points. You're talking about solutions here. It's just it's one thing to realize there's a problem. But what we're talking about here, what you're talking about here is you have an action point. You in other words, we're talking about taking personal responsibility for yourself. The first way to do that, and to be able to do that, is to dislodge from the old system. And gold happens to be, and silver happens to be, the actual hard currency that is going to enable you to get out of the system. And I think so, Robert. You know what? Some of the stuff you've raised today, and I think is so important when we realize to me, it suddenly gives me hope when we realize, and you've raised this several times, the younger people coming up are really looking for a solution. And I think it's what you're providing here. And I hope people land on your channel. And we try to do this in all our episodes, but as people land on your channel and find out how do they need a little counseling. They need a little help. You need a little hand-holding along the way. land on your channel,
Yep.
check in with you, see what's going on, learn. It's about education, and enable yourself to make some positive decisions which are available to you today, and not tomorrow, not in 10 years from now, today. And I think, Robert, thank you so much for joining us today, because I tell you what, it's been I can't believe it's an hour already. And the trouble is, when we go over an hour, we don't want to exhaust people, because I tell you what, really, I suggest people play this back more than once. Some of the stuff you've just talked about is so important, and it's about solutions, and you're talking about multifaceted solutions, but what things that people can actually do today for themselves. And I really do suggest they do pop in, and I land on your channel. I love what I read there. You have a Twitter exposure as well. And these younger people all have those things. They all have social media. They're getting their news, they're getting their information from everywhere but the mainstream media. So this is just one more source for them to add to that suite of options they have.
Yeah. And thanks for the exposure, Andy, and thanks for having me on and give me an outlet to talk about it. I appreciate it. You guys have wonderful, wonderful content. You have great guests. It's really become one of the channels I go to because I know I'm going to get a bunch of different guests. I'm going to get your commentary. I know you rotate between doing yours and the guests. And it's very well balanced, and it's very informational. And I love channels that are informational, that are educational, that provide people actual working knowledge. You guys do such a great job. So thank you for letting me, just be a small part of that.
Bless you so much for joining us. And I really do encourage people to land on your site.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Andrew Maguire and Robert Kientz, for another fascinating discussion. And remember, to our Live from the Vault community, buy physical and make sure it's backed 1-to-1, and understand the difference between what Andy calls the casino paper gold and silver markets and the actual physical gold and silver markets. They're not the same. Don't be fooled. And there you have it. That's all we have for you today on another episode of Live from the Vault. So please help keep spreading the word about this channel by hitting that like button, share this information, and if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe. Click on the bell right there, the black bell, if you'd like to be notified as each episode goes live. And with that, we'll see you next time right here on Live from the Vault. See you then.